Is Donald Trump's actions in Syria the abandonment of Israel and the beginning of the Sixth Trumpet War? We will discuss the prophetic significance of these scenarios and others on today's edition of End of the Age. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with Endtime Ministries. Thank you for joining me on this edition of End of the Age. Now, a lot of people are wondering about Trump's withdrawing the troops from Syria and a lot of different things. We've got a lot of emails on that. And so I wanted to bring that up today, and then I'll get off into maybe a Middle East peace agreement update. But my reason for mentioning this today, the Trump American troop situation in Syria, is really twofold. Number one, I've seen many articles in major news sources that are stating things like, can Israel trust the United States after the Syria withdrawal? Or Trump's new actions or inactions on the Kurds, Syria, and Iran have Israel deeply worried. And then the second reason would be that some folks are wondering if this is the beginning of the Sixth Trumpet War. And so the fact of the matter is, I just wanted to, let's talk about it for a little. Let's analyze the situation and see what's going on. The question is, can Israel count on the United States to stand with her in the future? Well, I can say absolutely yes, she can. We look to the prophecies of the Bible. All of these things that we'll look through is through a prophetic lens. And if you go to Revelation chapter 12, verse 14, it says, and to the woman, and the woman in Revelation chapter 12 is Israel, the woman with 12 stars around her head. It says, and to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, which we know is Israel proper, the promised land, where she is nourished for a time, times, and half a time from the face of the serpent. So it's important that we understand here that during this final 3.5-year period, this time, times, and half a times is referring to the Great Tribulation. The final 3.5 years just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ and the Battle of Armageddon. The Bible says that Israel will be carried away on the wings of a great eagle. Well, from other prophecies, we know the eagle would represent the United States. And of course, like I said, the woman is Israel. So this lets us know from Scripture that America will protect Israel all the way through the end time. And it's a very important prophecy because when you see major news sources saying, can Israel count on the United States now because Donald Trump withdrew troops and moved them away from the Kurds in Syria? Well, you don't have to, that's really not even a question in my mind. I already know the answer because I understand the prophecies of the Bible. So it's very important that we understand the prophecies going off into the end time. Now, also, The Hill, the news source The Hill, reported that Trump knocks the ridiculous, endless wars amid the U.S. troop pullout from Syria. So what's really going on here? Because people have tried to, Republicans and Democrats have tried to demonize Trump for what he's doing. But he did run on, during his campaign, he ran on a platform of America first, and we will bring our boys home. Now, who wouldn't want to bring our troops home and keep them out of harm's way? I mean, think about that. What were we doing in some of the Middle East to begin with, in Syria and different things? I know we were fighting ISIS and this, that, and the other, but once we defeated ISIS, what was the point of remaining there? And you've got to ask yourself, on all these different scenarios, different wars we've fought over the years, why were we there in the first place? Now, President Trump on Monday said that it is time to remove the United States from the ridiculous, endless wars. I mean, I think we've been in Afghanistan for, 19 years or something like that? And after he decided, these endless wars, after Trump decided to pull the American troops from northern Syria, and amid an impending Turkish military operation there, and Trump tweeted this. He said, the Kurds fought with us, but were paid massive amounts of money and equipment to do so. So they have been fighting Turkey for decades, long before we ever came in there. And he said, I held off this fight for almost 3 years. But it is time for us to get out of these ridiculous, endless wars. Many of them are tribal. And we need to bring our soldiers home. Well, he campaigned that he would bring our soldiers home. And many people voted for him, obviously. He's the President of the United States. But why are people screaming and bickering and fighting now that he's wanting to bring some of them home, making different? He's tried a few times now. He also said that we will fight where it is to our benefit and only fight to win. So these Trump's tweets are very unique. I'm sure if you've read them over the years, but he's saying some very important things here, and he's laying some foundation for what I'll get into when we get back from the break. It's very important. All he wants to do is bring our troops home, but there are people that are fighting him, and we'll get off into why they're fighting him when we get back.
We've seen Bible prophecy fulfilled like never before. From the halls of the United Nations to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, Endtime Ministries continues to reveal the Bible prophecy in the news headlines around the world every day. Whether it's through our broadcast or online at our Jerusalem Prophecy College, your gifts enable us to put vital materials in the hands of those who need it most. Because of you, we continue to replace fear with faith in the hearts of Christians around the world. We will continue to see prophecy come to pass at an even swifter pace. We need your support. Your donation of any amount enables us to continue to broadcast and be a voice in the ever-growing censored media. To become a partner or give a one-time gift, visit endtime.com or call 1-800-END-TIME right now. That's 800-363-8463. Go online now. Visit endtime.com.
Does the book of Revelation frighten you? Do its symbols confuse you? For centuries, the book of Revelation has been misunderstood and misinterpreted. In Revelation, the unveiling of Jesus Christ, Volume 1, Irvin Baxter unlocks the mystery of the book of Revelation with in-depth analysis and commentary like you've never heard before. This 10-part definitive DVD series and 268-page comprehensive commentary book covers the first 12 chapters of the book of Revelation, featuring on-location photography, classic artwork, and symbolic illustrations. You'll walk away with complete understanding and peace about the events happening during the final years on Earth. These comprehensive study tools, available for $299, will deepen your biblical understanding as you dig into the original intent of the book, answering the mysterious prophecies and symbols of the book of Revelation. Don't miss this special offer. Call now, 1-800-END-TIME, or go to endtime.com to order. Call or go online now to get this comprehensive Bible study.
So we're going to talk about the question, and you got to ask yourself this. I've read so many articles on this. I couldn't count them all. But the fact of the matter is, Donald Trump wants to bring our soldiers, male and female, home. Why are people fighting him against that? Well, before I get into that, I need to announce a conference that Irvin Baxter will be at this coming Saturday, October 12th. He's going to be teaching Trump, Jerusalem, and Armageddon from 6 to 8 p.m. Saturday night at the Sheraton Louisville Riverside Hotel, 700 West Riverside Drive, Jeffersonville, Indiana. If you'd like more information on that, go to endtime.com under the events section and then conferences. All the information is there, maps, whatever you need to get to the conference this coming Saturday evening. Now, another tweet that Trump put out. It said the United States was supposed to be in Syria for 30 days. That was many years ago. And we stayed and got deeper and deeper into battle with no aim in sight. He said, when I arrived in Washington, ISIS was running rampant in the area, and we quickly defeated 100% of the ISIS caliphate. That's what we went in to do when we defeated it. Why didn't we pull out? You say, well, we need to stabilize the area and this, that, and the other. Well, there is time for that, but at the end of the day, I want my sons and daughters coming home. I know that. And I know a lot of you do too as well. So Trump's remarks, they came hours after the White House announced late Sunday that Turkey would be moving forward with a long-threatened offensive in northern Syria, and that the U.S. troops would not be in the immediate area when it happens. So Trump spoke with the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan about the matter early Sunday. And then the White House press secretary, Stephanie Grisham, said this: Turkey will soon be moving forward with its long-planned operation into northern Syria, and the United States Armed Forces will not support or be involved in that operation. And the United States forces, having defeated ISIS, the territorial caliphate will no longer be in the immediate area. Now, the U.S. began pulling back troops from the Turkish-Syrian border early Monday morning, according to many reports. And so one of the reasons I want to bring this up is because I've received, as a result of some of these actions, we've received a lot of emails asking, could this be the beginning of the sixth trumpet war in Revelation 9, 13 through 21. Why? Well, Revelation 9, 14 and 15 says this: saying to the sixth angel, which had the trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour a day, a month, and a year, for to slay the third part of men. Now, many of you have heard us teach on this over the years, but the Euphrates River, so it lets us know right here that loose the four angels bound in the great river Euphrates. So it's going to be this Euphrates River region where World War III originates. The Euphrates River starts in Turkey, it flows down through Syria, through Iraq, and it empties into the Persian Gulf along the border of Iran and Iraq. And to say that this move by Turkey to invade northern Syria there, and the United States moving out, leaving the Kurds and this, that, and the other, would be purely speculation on my part to say that this would start the sixth trumpet war. And I'm answering a lot of emails right here on the program today because we simply don't know that at this point. I mean, we don't know which, it could be Iran, it could be Syria, Turkey. We don't know exactly. Will ISIS rise again? I mean, I don't know the answer to that at this point. So it would be speculation for me to say, yes, this will start the sixth trumpet war. It's already started, and this is the spark that will get us into full-on World War III. I don't know that at this point. It would be strictly speculation. And so I wish we could give you a conclusive answer, but we simply can't. We do know the war's coming, but at this point we can't tell you which conflict, because there's many, which conflict would be the spark. So, but beyond that, I want to talk about, just for a second, kind of what's going on, the behind-the-scenes scenarios that are going on with this, and why people would be demonizing Trump for wanting to bring our troops home or to get them out of harm's way. So Trump's decision to do this, it drew immediate criticism, including from one of his closest allies, Senator Lindsey Graham, a Republican from South Carolina. Trump, many of you already know, he campaigned on bringing our U.S. troops home. And he has sought to withdraw U.S. forces from Syria. I mean, he called for a complete withdrawal last December, but ultimately reversed course amid the protests from the Pentagon. You say, well, why? I don't understand. Well, we'll get to that in a moment. Trump stated, he said this, he said, Turkey, Europe, Syria, Iran, Iraq, Russia, and the Kurds will now have to figure this situation out and what they want to do with the captured ISIS fighters in their neighborhood. I mean, they need to police their own countries, not the United States be over there policing. I mean, imagine if we had Russian troops here policing us. None of us would stand for that. At least I hope we wouldn't. But yet we've been over there policing them. We want to bring our guys home and gals home. And they all of those nations hate ISIS, and they've been enemies for years. So we need to let them take care of them, is what Trump is saying. And he said we're 7,000 miles away. And we will crush ISIS again if they ever come anywhere near us. Now, this was another Trump tweet. So he's spelling out exactly what's going on here. We need to let them police. We're 7,000 miles away. We need to take care of our own here. Well, Trump is endeavoring to honor his campaign promises to bring our troops home. But he's battling a very powerful group of individuals who make money from being in conflict, from war. And it's the same, it's called the military-industrial complex. It's the same military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us about. You say, Eisenhower? Well, I'll get to it in just a moment. But in May of this year, CNS News reported that Trump said that you do have a military-industrial complex and they do like war. Trump knows exactly what he's up against. President Trump was speaking, this was in May, he was speaking about a hostile foreign powers, Iran especially, and he told Fox News that if he can solve tensions economically, he prefers to do that than a military solution because it saves lives if you can do that. That's why he's hammering Iran with sanctions rather than going across the Persian Gulf and doing a full-on invasion. He's sanctioning them to death right now. So if you've been keeping up on this at all, many of you have, Donald Trump threatened to sanction Turkey if they didn't play by the rules. And The Hill reported that Senators Lindsey Graham and Chris Van Hollen, they announced yesterday that they have reached an agreement on new sanctions against Turkey after that country launched a military operation in northern Syria. So the fact is that Donald Trump is fighting the military-industrial complex, and he knows it. I mean, he said he's up against this military-industrial complex in Washington, and that he tried to bring people out, and that they wanted to keep the wars going. Now, we're going to get to why they would want to keep the wars going in a minute, but I want you to hear a clip of what Donald Trump said concerning the military-industrial complex.
So you can reassure people you're not looking for some kind of conflict in Iran.
Well, I'm the one that talks about these wars that are 19 years and people are just there. And don't kid yourself, you do have a military-industrial complex. They do like war. You know, in Syria with the caliphate. So I wipe out 100% of the caliphate. That doesn't mean you're not going to have these crazy people going around blowing up stores and blowing up things. These are seriously ill people. I don't want to say, oh, they're wiped out, you know, ISIS. But I wiped out 100% of the caliphate. I said, I want to bring our troops back home. The place went crazy. They want to keep, you have people here in Washington. They never want to leave. I said, you know what I'll do? I'll leave a couple of hundred soldiers behind. But if it was up to them, they'd bring thousands of soldiers in. Someday people will explain it.
Well, this is an example.
You do have a group, and they call it the military-industrial complex. They never want to leave. They always want to fight. No, I don't want to fight. But you do have situations like Iran. You can't let them have nuclear weapons. You just can't let that happen.
So there you have it. In the words of Donald Trump, he's saying, I'm trying to bring them home, and I've got a military-industrial complex. He's talking to his people in Washington, and they're against him bringing our guys home. He said, hey, you've got a military-industrial complex. So he said they like war. They would send more guys in if they could. So you say military-industrial complex. I'm not 100% sure I know what that is. Well, President Dwight D. Eisenhower, he really introduced the idea and made it famous. I think it was brought up before that, but he's the one that really brought it to the forefront. He introduced the idea to the public in his farewell address in January 17th, 1961. And he stated this, and I'm going to quote. He said, "Our military organization today," now this was 1961 again, "our military organization today bears little relation to that known by any of my predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by the fighting men of World War II and Korea. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. We must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex." So the military-industrial complex, it's a group of huge corporations. They're very huge corporations that have a vested interest in keeping the U.S. in conflicts. It all boils down to money. These are people that would build armaments. I mean, like missiles and jet planes and different things like that. I'm not going to call their names, but these people are vested in, I mean, imagine a company that builds rockets for wartime, and then we're not in a war for 10 or 15 years. Do they stay in business? No. They don't have a client. Their clients are governments. And so it's called the military-industrial complex. And according to global research, the top 5 Pentagon contractors, these corporations, they split about $100 billion a year of Pentagon spending. And they are the huge corporate beneficiaries. So you wonder, Donald Trump is you just heard it from him himself, that he's fighting the military-industrial complex who wants to keep our guys over there and gals and even send thousands more if they could. I mean, I heard Donald Trump speak today, and he said that there are people in Washington that would, I think he said Lindsey Graham, that said he would keep us there 200 years if he could. And so, why? The military-industrial complex. Donald Trump said, "I wanted to pull my guys out," and he said the place I was sitting in went crazy. They want to put more people in. Why? It's all about money, folks. There are people, huge corporations, that make money from war. And you wonder why we're embroiled in a conflict all the time. I mean, when have you known us not to be embroiled in a conflict? For decades now. So, only time will tell, really, what conflict will spark this, because I brought this up from a prophetic viewpoint. A lot of people have emailed us and said, "Hey, you know, what about the Sixth Trumpet War?" I mean, we're right here in the Euphrates River starts in Turkey, comes down through Syria, and now here's this situation with Donald Trump and pulling our guys off the northern Syrian border, and Turkey's coming in. So only time will tell what conflict will be the spark that finally ignites the Euphrates River region into all-out World War III. At this point, we simply don't know. I wish we did, but we don't. But one thing we do know for sure, World War III is coming, because the prophecies always come to pass. There's not 1/10 of 1% chance that this will not happen. And it's very key that we talk about it right now. That's why we're getting so many emails, because the Sixth Trumpet War and the peace agreement are the next 2 prophecies to be fulfilled on God's prophetic timeline. This huge timeline from the Old Testament prophets to Revelation chapter 22, all these prophecies that have been fulfilled already, and the few that are left, well, the next 2 is the Sixth Trumpet War and the peace agreement. So it's very important that we talk about it. But I wanted to kind of give you a little background about kind of what's going on with Trump right now. Because you see Republicans that are balking at the fact of what he's doing over there. I mean, during the campaign, they were all for bring the boys home and the girls. I I want to make sure that the lady soldiers are involved because they're doing a wonderful job over there and they're very, very, very important. But the fact of the matter is, who wouldn't want them to come home? Well, if you're making money from them being over there, sure, you wouldn't want them to come home. So it's very important that we understand what Donald Trump is up against. Now, with that said, let me spin a 180 here. We talked about the World War III, what's going on in the Middle East with Donald Trump, and everybody's talking about him pulling out of, positioning people, our soldiers around, perhaps pulling some of them out of Syria and bringing them home. And I want to move into talking about the peace agreement and kind of give a peace agreement update and see what's going on, because it's very important. Because like I said, the Sixth Trumpet War and the peace agreement, World War III and the peace agreement are the next two to be fulfilled. The Bible doesn't say which one happens first. But these are the two most talked about things in the news right now. Is conflict in the Middle East right along the Euphrates River region. Again, Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. All four nations are embroiled in a conflict. And then also, when you talk about the peace agreement in the Middle East, it's one of the most talked about things in our news today. So we need to talk about it because Donald Trump is waiting on the elections or the formation of a government, I should say, in Israel to release his peace agreement. And it would be, there's no sense in really releasing it now while there's no government. I mean, at least from my standpoint, looking at it from a prophetic viewpoint. But we'll give you an update on it. I tell you what, we'll give you an update when we come back from the break. I'll spend the rest of my program on the peace agreement because it's very important that you understand that prophetically. Where's it coming from? I mean, you guys need to be able to explain this just like Irvin and I can, because you need to get to your sphere of influence, make sure people know about this stuff, because prophecy is about 30% of the entire Bible.
Move Mountains with Irvin Baxter. This book by Irvin's grandson provides 30 days of devotion that will enhance your relationship with God and others. Authentic illustrations from early morning devotions at Endtime will help you find your purpose and eliminate fears. Commit to taking this 30-day journey and experience real life change. Get your book for only $14.99. Call 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com/move.
If ever people needed to hear the unvarnished truth, it is now. There are some subjects that are not politically correct to talk about, but they're urgent. That's why I'm grateful for Endtime magazine. If you're not a subscriber, you're missing information that will impact your life. Endtime has a bi-monthly magazine that explains how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. You can get a 2-year subscription for only $29. You can also get a bulk subscription and pass them out to your church. We have gotten reports that Endtime magazine has caused spiritual awakenings in churches when they see the prophecies being fulfilled right now. You can start your own ministry and leave them in doctor's offices, libraries, laundromats. You never know if you might be responsible for saving someone who is searching for the unvarnished truth. That's what the magazine has done in many lives. Call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 and get your subscription today.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archive button.
So when I'm talking about the peace agreement, many of you can teach this as good as we can. You've been through Jerusalem Prophecy College. You went through the Understand the Endtime DVD series, many different things, and you're very well versed on this. But let me give you kind of an update on what's going on as far as the peace agreement goes. Daniel 9:27, the Bible says, "And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week." Well, we know that at least Israel and the Palestinians are going to be involved in this. But when Donald Trump came in, he immediately moved into trying to establish a regional situation. Rather than going straight to Israel and the Palestinians and say, you guys have to sign a peace agreement, his first trip overseas was to Saudi Arabia, okay? So he was trying to get, because what had happened in years past is that the Palestinians, the Israelis, they would come to the negotiating table, and then many times the Palestinians would fall back on the Arabs and the Arab League and say, well, we just can't do this. This doesn't line up with the Arab Initiative. We can't do it. And everything fall apart. Well, back in May, because the fact of the matter is, and when we're talking about the peace agreement, let me clarify something, is that it could be, we're watching this thing, unfold right before our eyes, but the fact of the matter is it could be a regional situation where there's many nations involved, bringing the Palestinians to the negotiating table, and many politicians. I mean, when we go to sign a peace agreement, the United States will be involved because we'll be there with Israel. And many Arab nations will be there with the Palestinians. The European Union will be there. Russia will be there. The United Nations will be there. I mean, it's going to be an international type situation because the international community still recognizes Jerusalem as an international city. And so the Bible says, and he shall confirm a covenant, he being the Antichrist, shall confirm the covenant with many. So there's a lot of different things that are going to happen when that peace agreement is signed, and a lot of different people are going to be involved. But when we're talking about a regional agreement, because the reason I want to bring this up is it's part of my update, but I want to make sure you understand that what the Arab League used to just be adamant. We will not sign, we reject Israel's homeland, Israel as a Jewish homeland. I mean, they were just dogmatic. And so we thought, well, they're not going to be involved. It's going to be the Israel-Palestinians. But the times are changing right now. Everything's kind of, that big staunch, hard attitude is melting a little bit. Back in May of 2014, Fox News reported that the Arab League, which would be the Sunni Muslim nations, Saudi Arabia and the different ones around, that they rejected Israel as a Jewish homeland. Arab leaders, they said that they will never recognize Israel as a Jewish state, and they blamed it for the lack of progress in the Middle East peace process. That was back in 2014. But last year, the Times of Israel reported that the Saudi crown prince recognized Israel's right to exist, and he talks up future ties with them. So a 180 spin here, and the Saudi crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman, in an interview last year, he recognized Israel's right to exist and extolled the prospect of future diplomatic relations between his kingdom and the Jewish state. And he was asked whether he believes the Jewish people have a right to a nation state in at least part of their ancestral homeland. And he said this, and I'm quoting, "I believe that each people anywhere has a right to live in their peaceful nation. I believe the Palestinians and the Israelis have the right to have their own land." And so the Arab attitude is definitely changing toward Israel. It's softening. They're starting to be more accepting of Israel being there in their promised land. Now, I'm not talking about Iran. Iran still wants to wipe Israel off the face of the map. But I'm talking about the Sunni Arab nations that are kind of softening in their stance toward Israel. Now, the World Israel News, they reported that Israel's working on a historic non-aggression pact with Arab states to counter Iran. Now, this is huge. This is not Donald Trump's deal of the century. Two different things, okay? Now, this one may lead into the other, but these are two different things. But it's very important that we talk about this. Foreign Minister Israel Katz confirmed on this past Sunday that Israel has been working toward achieving the historic goal of reaching non-aggression pacts with Gulf countries. And he said, recently, he said, I've been promoting with the backing of the Prime Minister a diplomatic initiative to sign non-aggression agreements with the Arab Gulf states. And he said, it's a historic move that will end the conflict and enable civilian cooperation until the signing of peace agreements. So these are just non-aggression pacts, not a legit peace agreement, a solid agreement in the Middle East. But these still would soften everything, so everything's not so harsh. Like Saudi Arabia used to, you couldn't fly over there and go into Israel and things like that. Well, now that's all kind of gone away. Everything's softening, and they're doing these non-aggression pacts. They're working on them, and I've read many articles that said that the Arab nations realize that they need Israel's ingenuity and their products and different things, because you realize as far as the technical and the like the web and a lot of different products that Israel puts out, they're far advanced even from the United States. And so the Arab nations realize, hey, we could really benefit from Israel's technology. That's my word I wanted. And so they realize, hey, let's go ahead and let's soften this thing down, because also we need Israel's help in this situation that we have going on with Iran here. Because you realize that the Arab nations, these Sunni, like Saudi Arabia, they're a Sunni Muslim nation. Iran is Shia Muslim. And they are diametrically opposed to each other. They hate each other. So, this also includes the hope of normalization of ties. This was published, it was reported on by Channel 12 in Israel, with a clause envisioning the development of friendly relations and cooperation in accordance with the provisions of the United Nations Charter and the principles of international law. Now, you understand what's going on here, because right now, the international community does not recognize Israel's right to East Jerusalem. And so with this, they are kind of maybe getting the United Nations on board, because they're willing to say, hey, we're willing to sign these non-aggression pacts with these Arab nations, and we're going to do it in accordance with the United Nations Charter. But the fact of the matter is that we know, if you understand really the situation from a prophetic standpoint, Israel's never going to give up Jerusalem. It's going to be something that's going to be left to the end. It probably won't be decided on when the peace agreement is signed. It's going to be put off, because Israel's going to remain in control of that all the way to the Battle of Armageddon. But what this is doing, the aggression pacts, non-aggression pacts, are kind of, because you know the United Nations right now is anti-Israel, very anti-Israel. And so they say, hey, with these non-aggression pacts, we're going to kind of go along and align these with the United Nations Charter and the principle of the international law. So when we do sign a peace agreement in the future, that's where a lot of this stuff, if you look at it from a prophetic viewpoint, you got to talk about the peace agreement. These will allow the international community possibly to be a little softer towards Israel when we go into these peace agreements. Now, some of this is speculation on my part, because we're in the infancy stage of this. And so, but we got to talk about it and look at these scenarios, because this is huge. And it appears that the Palestinians are not going to be included in this. And, you know, because Israel Katz, he also said that he shared this document with Jason Greenblatt, of course, the president's outgoing special envoy to the Middle East, who has been working for the last 2 years on a framework of a peace agreement between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And the pact is envisioned to go into effect regardless of any progress or lack thereof on the Israeli-Palestinian tract. So it appears the Palestinians are not included in these deals. But what we've thought from the beginning of like the Trump presidency, when he started going into these other different nations, Donald Trump, Jared Kushner, Jason Greenblatt, was that they were going to get all the nations on board and have them have influence on the Palestinians and bring them to the table. And the United States would have influence with Israel and bring her to the table, and we might get a peace deal done. So President Trump called on Arab countries to normalize ties with Israel when he spoke at the opening of the General Assembly at the United Nations, and said, thankfully, there is a growing recognition in the wider Middle East that the countries of the region share a common interest in battling extremism and unleashing economic opportunity, because you realize Jared Kushner just a couple months ago rolled out the economic portion of Trump's deal of the century. So he said these people are really recognizing that we can help them. We have a common interest here. We can help them battle extremism, i.e. Iran, and they see the economic opportunity here in dealing with Israel. And he said that's why it's so important to have a fully normalized relations between Israel and its neighbors. So you say, well, what's going on with the peace agreement? Because there's so much the Israel and their election process. I mean, are you glad that we're not Israel? Because we can elect somebody, and when you get up in the morning, you know who was elected. Hey, it's either Donald Trump or it was Barack Obama or George Bush. But in Israel, you can have an election, and now they've had 2 elections this year, and they still have not been able to form a government. And it's possible, if they keep bickering back and forth and nothing can get settled, that they would go into, it's already an unprecedented second election in a year. Imagine what it would be to go into a 3rd election in 1 year. That would be a nightmare. Well, if Israel can't get a government formed right now, very soon, that's where they're headed, a 3rd election. And so it's a real conundrum over there. And so when we get back, I'll kind of give you an update on what's going on Trump's deal of the century, not the non-aggression pacts, but Trump's actual deal of the century that he's wanting to roll out if Israel would ever form a government. I'll give you an update on that, and then we'll talk about the peace agreement a little more before the end of the program.
Does the book of Revelation frighten you? Do its symbols confuse you? For centuries, the book of Revelation has been misunderstood and misinterpreted. In Revelation, the unveiling of Jesus Christ, Volume 1, Irvin Baxter unlocks the mystery of the book of Revelation with in-depth analysis and commentary like you've never heard before. This 10-part definitive DVD series and 268-page comprehensive commentary book covers the first 12 chapters of the book of Revelation, featuring on-location photography, classic artwork, and symbolic illustrations. You'll walk away with complete understanding and peace about the events happening during the final years on Earth. These comprehensive study tools, available for $299, will deepen your biblical understanding as you dig into the original intent of the book, answering the mysterious prophecies and symbols of the book of Revelation. Don't miss this special offer. Call now, 1-800-ENDTIME, or go to endtime.com to order. Call or go online now to get this comprehensive Bible study.
So I want to talk a little bit about the peace agreement. Obviously, it's prophesied Daniel 9:27. Actually, the entire prophecy is Daniel 9:24 through 27. And once you get that prophecy mastered, I mean, we've written articles and things on it over the years. It's Daniel's 70 weeks. And so let me talk about that just a moment real quick. Daniel 9:24 through 27. when we go off into the final 7 years, let's say we signed a peace agreement next year, and because it would be hard to get one signed probably by the end of this year. We've only got a few months left, but let's say we signed one next year. This is a hypothetical situation, obviously, and it has all the characteristics of the biblical peace agreement. That would start the final 7 years to the Battle of Armageddon. Now, again, I'm going to clarify, this is a hypothetical situation, okay? And let's say we started into that. Well, imagine what's going to happen to Endtime Ministries. Endtime Ministries is going to explode. Irvin, Baxter, myself, we'll be on every television and radio interview you can imagine, explaining, why did you guys just send a magazine to every home in Israel? And why are you, saying the final 7 years has just begun? Because it's a prophecy with a date on it. It really is. We didn't set the date. The Bible does. And so we're going to have to be explaining this. Well, the fact of the matter is, Irvin, Baxter, myself, we won't be able to do it alone. We will need, like we've said many times, we're going to need an army of people that can do radio, television interviews, that can do, that can teach Bible studies and conferences, and just answer phone calls. It's going to be crazy. And so we need you, because they're going to want to know, what do you mean we just started the final 7 years? To be able to understand that, you've got to be able to teach the Daniel 70-week prophecy in Daniel 9, 24 through 27. That just needs to roll off your tongue. And so you say, I don't know how to teach that. Okay. I wrote an article on it, a few years ago. And every time I talk about it, I'll tell you, hey, if you want my article, which explains the whole thing, email me, drobbins@endtime.com, or email Doug Norvell, and we'll send you a copy of the article. I'll just reply back. You can read the article and make sure you get it, because it explains how we know that once this peace agreement is signed, we've only got 7 years left. You're going to need to explain that 1,000 times or more when we get off into the final 7 years, because you're going to tell somebody, your boss maybe, hey, we just started the final 7 years, and he's going to go, what? Explain it. Well, you don't want to sit there like you don't know anything. And so it's very important that you understand Daniel 9, verse 24 through 27. I can send you the article. I've sent out tons of them. And if you want a copy, email me or Doug, and we will send you a link to that. So very cool. And you guys will really enjoy it. It's really, not because I wrote it, but it's a great article. It's prophecy. It's coming. It's just ahead of us. And so, okay, so Donald Trump's deal of the century. If President Trump's Middle East peace plan coined it the deal of the century, if it's implemented, let's say, I don't know, next year, next couple, 2 or 3 years, I don't know for sure. Nobody does at this point. But they're working awful hard on it. And if, let's say it's implemented, it's all signed by everybody, and if it has all the characteristics of the prophesied agreement, that will mark the beginning of the final 7 years to the Battle of Armageddon and the second coming of Jesus Christ to the earth. Now, that is going to set end time in motion, doing a lot of things, because a lot of things happen during that final 7 years. That's when we're going to mail, like I said, a magazine to every home in Israel. About 2.5 years in, or I should say 3 years in, about 6 months before it happens, we're going to go on a door-knocking campaign out in the West Bank. A lot of things are going to happen. A lot of you guys know what's going on. A lot of you are on board with that, and you're going to go to Israel with us. So a lot of things happen right here when the final 7 years starts. Let's say, should that come to pass, it's going to be obviously the greatest prophetic fulfillment in 2,000 years. It lets us know, oh my goodness, this is setting in on me. I'm feeling the weight of this. We've got 7 years left. So what's going on with Israel's election, this stalemate? Well, President Trump was prepared to release this peace plan, or his peace plan, in January of 2019. However, Israel's government had just collapsed, and that triggers new elections. So Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, he asked Donald Trump to delay the release of his plan till after the elections that were scheduled for April 9th of this year. And Trump consented. He said, okay, I'll wait. But he still thought he was going to be working with Netanyahu, because look at all he had done for Israel under Netanyahu, and he was, I promise you, he was fixing to call in a lot of favors when we went to the negotiating table from, and some compromises from Netanyahu. Well, when the election returns came in, the two major parties ended in a virtual dead heat. And after negotiating with the smaller parties, the required coalition of 61 seats in the Knesset could not be formed. Consequently, the government was dissolved, and a second round of elections were scheduled for September 17th. Well, we just went through them here not even a month ago now. And when the votes were counted in September, Netanyahu's Likud party had won 32 seats in the Knesset, and the Blue and White Party, led by Benny Gantz and Yair Lapid, they had won 33 seats. So Netanyahu and his right-wing partners could only amass 55 seats total, while Gantz and the left wing, they could only amass or assemble 54 seats. So there were two other complications, because it really seems like a mess to me, honestly. But included in the left's 54 votes were the Arab parties called the Joint List with 13 votes. However, the Arabs have never been willing to join a government led by the Jews. And so Gantz, the leader of the Blue and White, could really only put together a coalition of 44 seats in the Knesset. Not nearly enough for the 61 seats that are needed to establish a government. So, I mean, it's going back and forth. We're reading articles like crazy on this stuff every day at that point. And the Yisrael Beitenu party, led by Avigdor Lieberman, they had won 8 seats in the election. However, Lieberman said that he would not join a coalition with the religious factions and that were a critical part of Netanyahu's right-wing coalition. And if he would have, Netanyahu could have, if Lieberman would have, Netanyahu could have assembled a coalition of 63, which would have enabled him to easily establish a government. Hasn't happened yet. So, since neither party is able to assemble the majority needed to establish a government, the only conceivable way to put together a government is for the two major parties to form a national unity government. And many people are calling from that. But presently, Israel is still without a government. So what's going to happen? That's the big question. I mean, either the Likud party and the Blue and White party will agree to put together a national coalition, or Israel will be forced to go to her third election in less than a year. I mean, I can only imagine. Imagine here in the United States going through 3 elections in a year. I mean, that's crazy. But if they don't get something solved over there, that's what they're fixing to do. Well, here sits the Trump's peace deal that Donald Trump was wanting to roll out back in January. Now we're in October. And so when you think about Trump's peace deal, President Trump, he'd promised to reveal his deal just as soon as Israel finally installs a legitimate government. Because like I said, it'd really be a waste to do that prior to that. And if Trump's peace deal is then accepted by the Israelis and the Palestinians, and if the conditions of the deal meet the criteria outlined in the prophecies, the world would enter the final 7 years that will culminate with the Battle of Armageddon and the physical return of Jesus Christ to the earth. But right now, we're in limbo. I mean, it's at a deadlock. And so, I've read articles and we've studied and we've contacted people in Israel. At this point, we simply do not know what's going to happen and who's going to be able to form a government in Israel. it is possible they could go back to a third election, which just sounds like a complete, total, utter bunch of chaos. And so, but I mean, that's what we're waiting on right now. That's the update on the peace agreement. Now, like I said, though, this is very critical. Regardless of what happens in Israel politics, whether Netanyahu, the blue and white, whatever, Israel's going to sign a peace agreement in the very near future. It's critical that you understand that a peace agreement, the peace agreement, starts the final 7 years. You know, after an in-depth study of the entire vision found in Daniel 9, 24 through 27, it's clear that this is actually a prophetic time clock. And it's given to us straight from God. There have been people, prophecy guys, setting dates for years. We don't set dates. But if the Bible says this event's going to happen and there's 7 years left, you can take that to the bank. And so the prophecy begins with the commandment, Daniel 9, 24 through 27. The prophecy begins with the commandment to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, and it culminates with the second coming of Jesus Christ to the earth and the time of the Battle of Armageddon. Now that spans a long, long time. It's verse 27 that contains one of the few prophecies in the Bible with a date on it. Daniel 9, 27. And this prophecy is the most commonly recognized as the Daniel 9, 24 through 27. It's recognized as Daniel's 70th week. And it describes in detail the final 7 years before the second coming of Jesus Christ and the Battle of Armageddon. And because of Daniel's 70th week prophecy, it's possible for us to know the event that will trigger the final 7 years to Armageddon. And that event lies just ahead of us now. So the Daniel 70-week prophecy is absolutely one of the greatest prophecies of all time. And it's the prophecy with a date on it. The entire 70-week prophecy foretold when the Messiah would come to the earth the first time. It proved the identity of the Messiah, foretold the crucifixion, foretold the destruction of the city of Jerusalem and the temple, and it prophesied the event that will trigger the final 7 years to the Battle of Armageddon. And it provided clues to the identity of the Antichrist. And it established the final 7-year timeline of the end of the age events. So the world stage is set for the final 7 years to Armageddon to begin. The only question left is exactly when's it going to happen? So this is what we're watching for right now. Again, if you'd like a copy of the article that I wrote, Daniel 70 Weeks, email me, drobbins@endtime.com. Email Doug Norvell, dnorvell@endtime.com, and we'll shoot you a copy of it. You can read it. Make sure you understand. If you got questions, email us. We'll help you out any way we can because we're fixing to enter this time of the final 7 years.
Been End of the Age, brought to you by the faithful partners of Endtime Ministries. If you're not currently a partner with Endtime Ministries, or if you would like more information, we invite you to call us at 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463, or visit us online at endtime.com.
Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page.